Hey, good afternoon, good day, good whatever you are. I'm Rick Zanotti with Relate Corporation, and joining me right next door, not more than about 3,000 miles away, is Kirsten Rourke with Rourke Training. Hey, Kirsten, how are you?
Good, good. How are you today?
I am doing great. Well, you all excited? First show.
Yes, so excited.
It's good. We already got an audience in the chat room, and hopefully we have an audience on YouTube when we get going. And we've got a great guest today. Somebody you know pretty well. I only met him, I think, in May.
Actually, I only met him in May.
Oh, really? Okay. Very impressed.
Yeah, it's been a really fast friendship.
You want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, so what we've got is we asked Pariah Burke to join us, who is the go-to person for ebooks and e-publishing, and asked him to come on and talk about his upcoming book and upcoming business ventures and maybe some seminars and, other stuff.
Hey, Pariah, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm glad you could join us.
So am I, considering the fact that most people think I have a face for radio and a voice for print.
I don't have either, I think. So you're doing well.
But I'm ching.
Yeah, you're a good look. What's with this face for radio thing? You're a good looking guy. I mean, usually it's the homely ones. It's like, I have a face for radio.
Fishing. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
So, Pariah, what's new in your life?
Oh, lots of stuff. I'm very deeply involved in e-publishing, so at any given moment, there's lots of new stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
In fact, you've got a book coming out pretty soon, right?
Yes.
I have a picture of it here.
In early November, ePublishing with InDesign from Wiley Cybex.
That should be great. Now, for all those in the audience who weren't there, Kirsten hosted an Adobe camp back in May. That's where we all got together, and
yeah, it was great.
Pariah did a great, and I seriously mean it, a great seminar on e-publishing, where the industry's going, and all sorts of good stuff like that. He's a very good speaker, and it was just actually a lot of fun. So, and to this day, your I has Photoshops has stuck in my mind like nothing else. In fact, since then, we created two websites. One is called I has Gear, and the other one was, what is the other one? Oh, my wife created one called I has Pets. So,
cool. You
have inspired us. and
really cool.
We do has Photoshop. We're embarrassed to use it now after that seminar. So I was going, I think I've done stuff like that. Oh my gosh. So
It was good stuff.
Well, for the audience's information, what Rick's referring to is I did a presentation in Boston in May at the Adobe Design Camp. In one of the areas that I talk about is how accessible e-publishing is. Depending on the formats that you're publishing to, talking about ebooks or digital magazines, things like that, there are no barriers to publishing, to self-publishing. For instance, ebooks, there's zero cost. You could sit down with whatever note-taking program you have now and write an ebook from scratch. You have zero cost involved in that. So that leads to people who really shouldn't be writing ebooks writing ebooks. Not all of them, of course, because I write ebooks myself. But it's what I call the I has Photoshop syndrome. I has Photoshop, ergo IR designer. Well, I has InDesign or Word or Apple Pages, ergo IR book publisher. So I had this one slide that I showed, and it was a bunch of monkeys hammering away on a laptop, and it said I has Photoshop syndrome. And that's what Rick's referring to.
I just want to know
that being a family picture.
Yeah, and I just want to know how you got into our offices to take that shot. I just don't quite get it. That was scary. I knew 3 people in that picture, but
Like, uh-oh.
But actually, it's very effective because if you think about it, Photoshop's been around a long time, but it hasn't really been accessible for probably about 5 years, where people are actually spending the money on Photoshop. Well, actually, you can get an academic version pretty cheaply. And everybody goes, hey, I know Photoshop now. Let me remove a background. And they remove the background, including the person. You have a blank screen. And it's just all sorts of fun stuff going on with Photoshop. But you're right. It just kind of it brings it down to every person's level, whether it's Photoshop or Photoshop Elements or something like that. But
or Photoshop Touch.
Or Photoshop Touch. But the design skills just aren't there. And my favorite is the use of 48 fonts on one page.
Yeah.
That one, it's like, hey, look at all the fonts you can do in Photoshop. This is fun. And there you go.
And they invariably include Comic Sans, Bleeding Cowboy, and Tree Frog.
I haven't tried Bleeding Cowboy. I should try that one.
No, the sad part is even theoretically experienced designers like Calvin Klein does some stuff with Photoshop that's gotten them on the Photoshop Disasters website twice.
Oh, no.
Really bad work.
Oh,
Really
I wish I
bad.
could show you some photos. One of the follow-up slides included some Photoshop disasters, including one that was on Digital Photographers Magazine's cover, where they goofed up a photograph of a camera in a national printed magazine.
That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Well, that also goes to another thing that's missing nowadays, and that's proofreaders.
Yes.
Proofers. People who go, hey, this camera looks more like a stick. What is this? And it's just pretty amazing. But we see it all the time. I mean, in what we do, I do e-learning development and design in our company, and we see all sorts of weird stuff coming out of e-learning and design or lack of design in e-learning. In the old days, we were able to do much better designs. Nobody wants to budget a nice-looking piece. So you have a lot of pieces that are kind of nice, untextured backgrounds. So, we try to put whatever we can in things, but it's amazing what is out there is considered, here's our e-learning design. How much did that cost? Oh, that was $200,000. And you just kind of shake hands. Really? Did you guys hire a graphic artist? No. We has Photoshop. So, yeah, it's interesting.
So let me start kicking off the more serious part here.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said earlier, Pariah and I we're talking about the upcoming thing, and we were actually talking about his topic, digital convergence, which is what this all is. And so for those of you who did not bother to Google it, okay, the digitizing of traditional media is kind of why we wanted to kick off the show with Pariah. So,
Pariah, I'd love to learn about that, but I haven't heard of that before.
Yeah, thank you, smartass. You realize when you move here, you're going to be within range, right? Just saying. Could you briefly talk about the story of your book? There's quite a saga there.
Sure. Okay, so let me explain. Well, by the way, Lily was asking in the chat. I guess for some reason the Amazon site, they took the link down for the Kindle version. It'll be back, Lily. I don't know why it's gone. It was there. The book will be available in ebook because it would be kind of tragic if I wrote a book about creating ebooks and I didn't make the book available as an ebook.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, just so you know, I'm keeping an eye on that. I'm going to work those in. If you don't catch it, I will be catching those, so don't worry about it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so ePublishing with InDesign. It covers everything to do with e-publishing in the modern world. E-books, e-magazines, e-catalogs, fixed layout e-books like the children's books and picture books that are primarily on iBooks now. Kindle and Nook have fixed layout e-books, but they're not as popular yet as they are in iBooks. And then, digital magazines from like Adobe DPS, Digital Publishing Solutions, Press Run, Aquafatus. There's even a chapter on best practices for PDF-based e-publications. So basically, I wanted to write this book that was the start to finish how to publish in pretty much any modern format. From ebook to full-on, totally interactive iPad magazine, which was, a pretty ambitious effort. I know, but I've been teaching. I've been teaching it. I'm an expert in that field. I've helped, beta test most of the publishing systems out there, and I've been writing about it in articles for quite a while. So I said, there needs to be a book. And everybody else is writing books on how to publish with Adobe Digital Publishing Solutions, and that's it, just the Adobe solution. And that's not at all there is out there. There are plenty of other systems. There are plenty of better systems than Adobe DPS. And I think oh, there's a red dot on my chest. Adobe,
I was going to say the
sniper
Adobe
across the
snipers have
street.
found you.
But there are better systems out there, and I wanted to write a book that let creative professionals, either self-publishers or people who want to make a living designing and publishing these materials, know what the systems are out there, what the pros and cons are of the different systems, and teach them how to do everything, not just in an Adobe-centric system, but also everything that's out there. And I did stick to InDesign because there's only two options really. There's InDesign, there's Quark Express. And I just kind of had a focus on one, partly because book publishers don't buy books on Quark Express anymore. And InDesign's the best tool for the job. But anyway, so I have this huge target of topics to hit. Ebooks, PDFs, digital replicas, which are basically PDFs that are turned into iPad apps, and then interactive magazines, which are the ones that, they have the 3D rotation in them, they have the embedded video and all the neat interactivity. And I start writing November of last year, and I'm ahead. I've suddenly got 4 or 5 chapters out, or by January I had 5 chapters written. I'm thinking, okay, so our April target date for publishing, we're gonna hit this early, because it's a 12-chapter book. I've already written 5 in the first month and a half. We're doing great. By the end of January, I had written 3 more chapters, but at that time, in January, Apple came out with the new version of iBooks, the iBook. Oh, I forget the name of it now. It's
the
iBook Author.
iBook Author, I think.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, iBook Author for creating fixed layout textbooks. At the same time, Amazon came out with their new KF8 Kindle format. EPUB 3 had just been approved and standardized in November. So at the end of January, I had to rewrite 4 chapters because everything changed.
It's the joy of being an author, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And then that's pretty much how things went from then on. In April, it's all done. Our publication date had slipped back because of me having to rewrite so much of it and figure it all out because there were no reference books. So I had to sit down and build a bunch of ebooks and different publications with all these systems and figure out the ins and outs myself, test it, figure out what didn't work on this device, what does work on that device, and then describe all that for the readers of the book. So, by April, I'm, just about ready. I'm writing the last chapter, which is on Aquafatus, a competitor to Adobe DPS. And then Aquafatus pushes out version 2. Changes everything. So I have to rewrite another 3 chapters. From scratch. Completely new screenshots, everything. And then something that was supposed to be in the final release of InDesign CS6 didn't work right, so that got pulled out, so I had to go back and change a bunch of screenshots and rip out the descriptions of that. So we're just about done with the book. But it's been a moving target, and it's not only me, because it's not self-published. It's, it's a big-time technical book with a book publisher and a whole team. So there's me writing it, then there's my tech editor, who has the patience of Job, having to go back through these chapters over and over again. Then there's 3 other editors, a copy editor, developmental editor, and then some other editor whose title I don't quite remember. All going through this, all taking their time at it. And then we've got to go to layout and different, 4 stages of proofing, and it's just nuts. And my original concept for this book was we need to publish chapter at a time as a digital format. Then put the final book, once the whole book's written, then put it out in print. But in the meantime, just sell it, chapter at a time. So as I write a chapter, it gets proofed and laid out, and then we push it out the door and people can read it. The publisher's not set up for that. And major book publishers are not set up for the current demands of the market. And I'm not alone in this. There was another conference I did right after Boston that we ended a 3-day conference with a bunch of us authors telling our horror stories on stage. And this poor guy, Joseph Lebrecki, wrote a book on Adobe Edge, which is an animation tool. And the day his book hit the shelves, Adobe released a brand new version of Edge that completely changed the user interface.
Great.
Joseph's book was useless. And unfortunately, those are my story, and Joseph's are not too unusual these days.
And Pariah, it's real interesting. When I do go to Barnes & Noble, we have a really big one not far from where we live. And they had 4 big aisles, double-sided, of computer books, tech books, graphic books, you name it. Last time I was there, which was about a year ago, maybe a little bit less, it had gone down to 1 aisle, half only.
And a whole Nook store.
I was going, oh my gosh, yeah, and they have a big Nook area.
Yeah.
It was bizarre. It's like, what happened to all the computer books? And you literally have to go to Amazon if you want to find them. And there are less being published because exactly what you're going through. The manufacturer, let's say the software developers, are publishing so quickly. They're coming up with so many bug fixes, so many releases, so many. I mean, what was it? Adobe had the idiotic idea of the 5.5 releases, the 0.5. I go, please. Yeah, it's and everybody was irritated because those releases weren't worth the money for the 0.5 usually.
I need to interrupt for a quick second to make sure I get this question in. Pariah, can you speak to how many devices you have and how many devices you wrote for?
Okay. If I had been prepared for that, I would have actually had them here so I could show you.
No, just say it, because I can answer it in the chat pod, but I'd rather everyone gets it.
I have 2 iPad 3s. I have an iPad 1. I skipped the 2. I have 3 full-size, meaning 10-inch, around 10-inch Android tablets. Kindle Fire, Kindle Keyboard, which is the... actually, I have that one in reach. That's this one.
That's the e-ink one, right?
Yeah, the e-ink, the black and white e-ink. And it's actually, the battery's dead after a month, finally. What else? Couple of Android phones, because people do read ebooks and publications on phones. I don't have an iPhone because I like choice in my apps. But I do borrow iPhones from time to time to check digital publications, how those look. Men's Health is a digital magazine that they just built an iPhone-only version. It's a full interactive magazine for the little iPhone screen. I think those are... Well, and then I've got plenty of Macs and PCs, and I think that's about it on devices. No, Macs. Macs and Windows.
Yeah. Do you have a Nexus?
I do not.
Okay. That was a question, so.
Nexus.
So everything I publish or teach people to publish or in the book wrote about, I tested on all of those devices and usually more. Usually my tech editor, a friend of mine named Bob Levine, he tested things on a bunch of other devices as well. If you're producing digital publications, you want to have as many devices available as possible. Just test, because everything's slightly different. I've done tests on BlackBerry Playbooks and on the HP touchpad, both of which are completely irrelevant devices nowadays. But do test on everything else. Before we start broadcasting, we were talking. Rick mentioned a 5-inch Android tablet. Test on those because people read those. So yeah, I've got a lot of devices, and I've always, as soon as the Windows tablets come out, you can bet I'll buy at least 1 or 2 of those for testing.
Okay, so now that we've scared the daylights out of everybody, if people are starting,
if you're starting, make friends with people who have different devices. I honestly, I wanted to test on a BlackBerry Playbook without having to incur the cost of buying a totally useless piece of hardware. So I put an ad on Craigslist. If you have BlackBerry Playbook, I would like to borrow it for a couple of hours. And, I met some people at a coffee shop, and they brought their Playbooks, and I uploaded a couple of publications, took some screenshots, and that was it.
Now, won't the manufacturers send you something if you tell them what you're doing? Send me a trial version or demo version, and then you'll send it back or whatever?
You would think so, but not in this case.
Really?
When I started writing the book, I approached all these tablet and all sorts of device manufacturers, and I said, I told them who I was, and this isn't my first book. You can find me all over Amazon.
Yeah.
Told them who I was, what I was doing, gave them a basic outline of the book, even gave them my editor's contact info, and I asked if I could borrow, review units, which if you don't know, most companies have units that they give out for review for magazines and such. When you read a review in a magazine, the reviewer didn't buy that device. It was loaned to him or her. No, the only company that sent me a review unit was Lenovo, IBM. They sent me their business class Android tablet, their ThinkPad. Everybody else was like, well, we're not interested in sending review devices at this point.
Interesting.
Even Microsoft. I asked specifically, and I knew somebody there, and they got me through to the PR people, and I said, I'd really like to make sure that Windows is covered in this book. Oh, well, we're not interested in sending you a device. Okay.
Yes, the brilliance of current day marketing, I guess.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to get their stuff available to a wide variety and doesn't have an easy way of looking at a bunch of devices, what do you suggest they do? Are there emulators they can use? What should they focus on first?
Well, it depends on what they want to do. There are different classes of e-publications. There's e-books, there's PDFs, there's interactive replicas, digital replicas, which are basically PDFs as apps. And then there are the interactive magazines, the ones that have all the deep interactive features. E-books have emulators all over the place. You can, well, not necessarily emulators, but actual readers. You can download Kindle Reader software, Nook Reader software, the Sony e-reader, the Kobo e-reader software. You can get everything except iBooks on a computer for Windows and Mac, and in most cases Unix. So you can see what it looks like without having to actually have an e-reader device for the e-books. There are subtle differences and sometimes dramatic differences, so you do want to test on the actual devices if you can. But as you're building initially, you can just work with the software on screen. PDFs the same way. You can view them on any computer, but you should test them out on mobile devices. Now, digital replicas basically are just PDFs that are wrapped up in an app. Depending on the system you use, some of those can be viewed on a computer, like Zinio is a system, Z-I-N-I-O. Basically, you just design in inDesign or QuarkXPress or even Apple Pages or Microsoft Word or whatever, make a PDF, hand it off to Zinio. They format it and wrap it up so it's ready to be published as a mobile app. But they also make it available for reading on a standard computer screen, which is rare. So then you can test it, and how it appears on your computer screen is pretty much how it will appear and function on a tablet. It's just the viewer software is different. Now, if you're talking interactive magazine format, which doesn't necessarily have to be a magazine, it's just called that because magazines were the first ones to take advantage of the features of tablets. It can be an interactive catalog or a yearbook or a one-off, a deeply interactive ebook that's in interactive magazine format or folio. With those, there's always some kind of proofing system on your computer. For example, when you install Adobe Digital Publishing Suite tools or just InDesign CS6, which includes the tools, it'll automatically add the Adobe Content Viewer, which lets you preview it on your screen. If you install Aquafatus or Press Run, they all have their preview viewers as well. But to see how it will really function, the only way is to test it on a tablet, on an iPad, on an Android tablet, or on phones if you're building formats for those. So there is a way to proof every format, but the only way to know how your readership is really going to see it is on all these devices. Now, if budget's a concern, well, budget's always a concern with everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, my advice is, if you are serious about digital publishing, if this is something you're going to do going forward, either as an author or as a designer, get a bunch of different devices. get somebody to pay for it. At least always get the latest, most popular devices. Right now, that's the iPad 3 or the new iPad, the Kindle Fire, which accounts for more than 50% of all Android-powered devices, which is a huge market share. So you want the iPad 3, the Kindle Fire, and when the Windows tablets come out, get some kind of Windows tablet, because Windows tablets are going to be very big, because they'll run applications, full-size applications, not just apps, purportedly anyway. If you're building ebooks, you want to get a Kindle or a Nook. Even the $79 versions will work just fine. They're just the e-ink black and whites. And you do want to test it on an iPad, because a lot of people read ebooks on iPads, but you don't necessarily have to own an iPad for testing. You can just email it to somebody with an iPad and say, send me screenshots, or let me borrow your iPad for 20 minutes and see what works and what doesn't. And you may not want to say that you heard this from me, but another excellent way to do testing is the Best Buy stores, or Fry's Electronics if you're lucky enough to have one of those near you. Most of the tablets and e-readers that are on display at Fry's have live internet connections so that they can be tested. So you put your publication online somewhere you can get to it, you go to Best Buy, you access your publication from all these different devices, and you start making notes. Oh, okay, text wrap's weird here, the photographs are blurry there, and then you go back and you start fixing stuff.
We've actually done that at Best Buy. We've run courses. Let me see how this runs on this. Hey, it runs pretty well. Okay, let's erase the history here. Because they don't care. They don't check anything.
No.
Best Buy usually has crummy bandwidth. Fry's is pretty good.
Fry's is, but they're not all over the place. The only places I've seen Fry's are West Coast, and I think Arizona is the furthest east I've ever seen them.
Yeah, even the Apple Store has networking on their iPads and stuff, and it's amazing what you can download on those things too.
Oh yeah. If you want to test iPads or the latest generation of any Apple product, the Apple Store.
Yeah, they're great for
just
that.
Prepared to be bugged by all these people trying to sell you stuff. And you will not have anything that's not latest generation. You can't see what an iPad 1 or 2 user would see. You can only see what the iPad 3 users are.
That's true. Now, you mentioned Zinio. That's right now my favorite magazine format, mainly because it doesn't have a ton of bells and whistles, and it can zoom. You can just use your fingers, zoom in on the text, which you can't do on some of the fixed format ones.
Well, it's the way. It depends on the way they're built.
Like Apple's, like the ones that are on Apple in their magazine rack. I forgot what it's called. Those are pretty. You can only expand it so much, and you're kind of stuck. So they have some good magazines, but unfortunately, I find some of them hard to read. The 6-point fonts are just tough.
Yeah, and one other thing that's really nice about Zinio and some of its competitors is, in addition to the full magazine format where you have the layout exactly as designed in InDesign, they also have an ebook-like reading view of articles. So it'll reflow the text to fit the screen, and you can blow up the text, and it's all vector at that point. So it's basically like reading a magazine article as if it were an ebook.
Yeah, I thought that was clever. I didn't really realize it had that feature until like 6 months after I had it. Wait a minute, what's this? Oh, that's really cool. I just think they've done a great job, and it's interesting. Having been a magazine fanatic my whole life, here I am now with an iPad 3 or a new iPad, and just reading on that almost every single magazine I buy now, and I love the quality of the pictures. It just looks great.
Yeah.
Sharp, really sharp, and the colors, the vividness of the colors. Because if you notice, a lot of magazines now are going to just really bad, dull paper, cheap. I mean, paper is expensive, and if you go glossy, it gets more expensive.
Yes, and when they design, there's another issue. If you're designing for print, traditionally you've been designing in CMYK, which is printing ink colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, and then the K is black. Well, that's not practical anymore. Designers, even if they're producing print publications, even if they're producing print-only publications should be working in RGB. Let the color conversion from RGB down to CMYK happen later. And I say down because RGB has 16.7 million colors, roughly, and CMYK only offers less than 66,000 colors. So you try taking 66,000 possible shades and stick it on an iPad or any other digital device that supports 17 million, and you're wasting a lot of color space. You're making very dull, flat-looking colors. So if you're producing for print and digital, design both versions in RGB. And then you're taking full advantage of the colors on the digital devices, and then when you go to print, the colors will get downsampled to print anyway.
Yeah, I remember in the old days having to do film. Remember that? You had to go get your film done, and then it was in with CMYK. And I remember I had I guess it must have been a weird shade of red. And when the ad came out in the magazine, it was purple. I went, purple? Oh, God. It just wasn't quite right. And, back then you didn't really get proofs that often. It was just a different world. And it took forever to get this stuff done. 3-4 day turnaround for everything. Now you just send it to your digital printer. Is anyone using CMYK anymore?
For print work, yeah.
They still are. Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people are still in that habit. A lot of people don't know that they can go to RGB even for print work. Okay. It's kind of become a mission for Adobe to push people toward RGB. And I've been advocating that for a while because the layout programs do a pretty good job of color conversion, and the RIPs, the software that happens between layout and the actual printing press, they do a great job of color conversion anyway. So there's no reason to not work in RGB. It gives you so many more options as to what you can do with that content.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Kirsten, anything going on in the chat room right now?
Just mostly I'm asking people whether or not they're working and stuff right now. No digital publishing yet.
Any questions for Pariah?
Nope, not yet. Mostly, actually, how about this? What if someone has done some InDesign training, lots of InDesign training, but wants a project to start with that they have never done this before, and frankly don't want to be, oh my God, this huge project. What do you think a good beginning, just test project might be?
Good question. I always liked doing my resume. I've been in the business for a long time. As an actual working designer, and I moved from PageMaker to QuarkXPress, from QuarkXPress to InDesign, and I've used Ventura Publisher and all the others. And to use new layout programs or to learn new layout techniques, I always started by doing my resume. So I would open up the program and try and build a creative-looking resume in that program. And you could do the same thing with these digital formats, but instead of just listing your email address, you can hyperlink it. And then if you want to take it one step further, you can put the subject line of an email within the hyperlink of your email address. And then instead of just pasting pictures, your portfolio pictures onto the page, build a slideshow out of it to learn, how to build something like that as a digital publication. So you can get as deep or as shallow as you want with these technologies in the confines of a resume or a portfolio project.
That's pretty good. Which of all those tools you've mentioned, and I think at one point or other I've owned all of them or have worked on all of them with varying degrees of success. We're not really a publishing firm, but just every so often we self-publish stuff. Which is your favorite?
InDesign.
InDesign. Okay.
Yep. Hands down. And I still use and still teach QuarkXPress. And I still have some nostalgia factor for PageMaker. But InDesign is just so easy to master and become really good at and do any kind of project from.
That's great.
And I'm looking at the chat. I have used FrameMaker. When once upon a time, I used to train Adobe tech support people. I used to work for Adobe. And I was, among other things, the InDesign tech lead and the FrameMaker tech lead. And I will tell you that the day I left Adobe, I handed over to security my badge and my key and my knowledge of FrameMaker. And then I left.
And I never had to teach FrameMaker again. We've had this conversation. I made the mistake of confessing that I enjoyed teaching FrameMaker, and Pariah's eyes got huge, and he said, "You what?" And it was like, sorry. Yeah, I kind of liked it.
I don't mean to disparage FrameMaker. Not at all. It's just, it's not for me.
And it hasn't, I don't know, you don't hear much about it anymore in the industry. I mean, I'm sure it's used out there. I don't know how much, but you just don't hear about Adobe pushes the TechCom suite, but not real heavily.
No.
Not like they do other suites. You know, there's several suites within Adobe that are just sort of there. They're not crucial to their bottom line. You just kind of think they have it just to have their foot in the door somewhere, but it's kind of interesting.
FrameMaker gets less love from Adobe marketing than Fireworks and InCopy, which is saying something.
Saying something.
It took me a while to find InCopy and download it on their website, and then when I did, I was just going, what do I do with it now? Okay.
So do you want to tell the people who are watching on YouTube what the heck InCopy does, who don't know?
Who would you like to tell?
Either of you.
Well, I'll give you what I think it does, and then Pariah can correct me.
And then Pariah can go, no!
I downloaded it, and I said, okay, it's kind of like a word processor. Just couldn't figure out exactly how to use it when I first downloaded it. What do I do with it? Go to lynda.com. Hey, they have a course. Good. Now I can sort of figure out what I'm doing. But I never really got into it that much. I thought it was sort of interesting. And partly because I was busy, and I go, okay, leave this for another day, maybe. It wasn't one of those things that immediately hit me and said, I'm easy to use, go figure me out.
Yep.
It is a word processor of sorts, right?
It is. Think Microsoft Word without all of the extra junk in it, without mail merge and form field creation and all that stuff that that Word has become.
The simple word processing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what InCopy is. It's word processing specifically geared toward InDesign layouts or working with designers who are using InDesign. It lets you, if you're the InCopy user, it lets you see the layout as you're writing to it. So if you're in something like if you're in some editorial workflow like newspaper or magazine, you can see what we call the hole, how big a space is, and you can write to that hole to fill just the right number of words, right in InCopy, whereas the average publishing workflow now is writers and editors working in Word and designers working in InDesign, and editors write something, send it off to the designer says, I can't fit this, you need to cut about 50 words, sends it back to the editor, they go back and forth on what can fit, what can't. It takes out that back and forth part. It lets the editor see the layout and work in the layout, and write to the layout without actually being able to move objects around the page like a designer should.
Without able to destroy the layout.
Right. But not something that Adobe's pushing real heavily.
No, and it's insane that they're not. I've been using InCopy. InCopy 1.0 came out while I was working with Adobe, and so did version 2 and then CS. CS was version 3. If 1.0 wasn't available for sale to anybody, it was only for systems integrators like Woodwing and all those that would build database systems. 2.0, they finally made available because people like me were inside the company saying there are a lot of users out there that could use this. And they made that available, but they never told anybody about it. They just kind of put it up on the website. If you wanted to buy it, you could. And then CS, they finally started doing some marketing around, but it's never been. They've named it CS, and it's been updated with every version of InDesign, but they've never included it in the Creative Suite. And they've never marketed it.
It's not even in the...
it's not in the cloud.
It's not in the cloud, and it's not in the Master Collection or any of the other products, which is sort of... You'd think they'd throw it into the Master Collection since InDesign's in there.
Yeah.
No.
You would. And I get a lot of work training and consulting on InCopy and integrating or replacing Microsoft Word with InCopy and editorial workflows. Yeah. But most of the time, people will call me up and the conversation goes like this. We want to, we wish Word would work better with InDesign. Well, actually, there's a program called InCopy that'll do that. Oh, we've never heard of it. We've been asking Adobe for a solution.
Yeah, as somebody who has a love for Adobe Fireworks, I'm kind of used to them ignoring things that I care about.
Though they actually put it in the Master Collection.
They did, but they didn't explain to anybody what it was for.
That's right.
So you have to go digging to see that it's really bloody useful.
Well, it's kind of like when you go to really exclusive neighborhoods. There are no street signs. There's no sidewalks, and if you don't know where you're going, you don't belong there.
Yeah,
Right.
It's
pretty
the
much.
same idea with if you don't know what fireworks is for, you shouldn't even have it.
Yeah, but it's such a useful tool for and it's such a good introductory tool for anybody who wants to do web graphics. They don't have to learn the behemoth of Photoshop or its twin Illustrator.
Right.
You know, both of which I love, but if you just need to create some basic graphics, you don't need these big programs. Fireworks will do the job for you.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And if you want to resize images for the web, it actually has a better algorithm than
They have a better
versions of
batch
Photoshop does.
processor than Photoshop.
Yeah, it
At
does
least-
a really
at least
good
for
job.
real quick batch processing.
Yep.
It's not bad.
So, Rick, how are we for time?
We've probably already exceeded it, but what the heck? We're having a good time.
Well, let me ask one last question. So, Pariah, where do you see things headed? What should people start prepping their skills for? Briefly. I know that's a long question. What, you know?
Well, e-publishing is not going away. If you do any kind of research into e-publishing, then every 30 to 45 days, somebody new is screaming online, print is dead. It's not dead. It never will be dead. I guarantee you it will never be dead, because 80% of adult American citizens prefer printed material at some point in time. They prefer some kind of printed material. Bookstores still sell books. Newspaper machines still get emptied out daily. Magazines are still shipped through the mail. That said, print-only publications will be dead by the end of the decade. If your distribution is more than 5,000 copies, and you're not a church bulletin or a penny saver, and you're not doing digital format, your publication is going to be dead, or your ad revenue is going to be flat, at least. You need to look at digital publishing, and it's not that tough. It sounds intimidating, but it's not.
Well,
Oh, I think Skype's acting up.
Pariah,
Uh-oh.
your headset.
There we go. I think it's back.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
It got garbled for a little bit.
Oh, sorry about that.
That was the coded message that you just gave us.
Yes, and that encoded message is all you ever need to know.
That's right.
But yeah, so you have to embrace digital publishing to be competitive. If you are somebody who's putting out content,
I'm sorry. Jeff just said Adobe's hacking in. Very good, Jeff. Very good. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You were saying?
that's okay.
You
No,
left
that's
him
good.
speechless on that one.
Believe me, I've been trying to do that for 6 months.
I mean, do you realize in the last half hour he's had a red dot on him? Now they've...
Yep.
Oh, and it looks like my Creative Cloud membership's been canceled.
Oh my God! Since we have some time, the Creative Cloud, Lord God! I mean, this is so idiotic what they've done, and it was just not designed with any intelligence. Every month you deactivate. It's like, wait a minute, this is paid. I just got my notice saying it got paid. Then it says your subscription's expired. No, it just got paid. I got the email that said it got paid. Then you have to go back and register. It says you have too many activations. No, I don't. And then all of a sudden it works.
Okay, Pariah, let him have it.
Well, no, I personally like the Creative Cloud. I think it's a good idea for a lot of reasons. But
I do
I
too,
understand
but
those
not the
problems.
logistics of it.
Yeah, no, the logistics are broken.
Oh, the cloud is great. The logistics are idiotic. That's where they blew it.
Yeah, if you prepay for a year, you don't get that reactivation every month.
Yeah, no, I
So
probably should have.
everything-
The price was good enough. We should have.
And it still is. I think they extended it another week or two for the $29.99 a month.
Mm-hmm.
But
That was a darn good deal for the Master Collection. It was.
It is. But if you're not going to use the Master Collection, if you're only going to use one or two applications, it may not be the best financial deal.
Right.
That said, Adobe, and I've gotten this straight from vice presidents within Adobe. Adobe is 100% committed to the Creative Cloud, to the point that they will most likely get rid of Box product after CS7.
Makes sense.
there may not be a CS8 sold as a box product, or what we call a perpetual license, where you buy the serial number and then you own it forever. And their reasoning is the needs of customers are changing so frequently that box product no longer makes sense. They used to have a 24-month release cycle, and then as of CS2 or 3, they upped that to an 18-month release cycle. And even that wasn't doing well enough, so when CS5 came out, they said, okay, we'll do a half step, a .5 release in 12 months. So every 12 months, you'll get a whole new version of the software, which still wasn't keeping up with new feature needs. So the Creative Cloud addresses that need. We just saw last week, the week before, new features were added to Illustrator for Creative Cloud members. These are CS7 features in Illustrator CS6 that are only available to Creative Cloud subscribers. And every application will be getting new features. It'll get next generation features 3, 6, or 9 months ahead of the release of the next version in a box product.
Interesting.
So for that alone, it's really useful. Like Illustrator, one of the new features that was added was a packaging feature. So it'll grab all of the linked assets, all the fonts, and you can archive everything to DVD, or you can send off the whole piece of artwork just like you can an InDesign document. And that's very useful. People have been asking for that for years. Creative Cloud subscribers have it today. People who bought box product CS6 will have the opportunity to buy it next spring when CS7 comes out. So, that works pretty well. And a lot of people, the biggest question people have, or the biggest question I'm asked about Creative Cloud is, you have to pay $50 a month, or $30 if you get it on the sale. And then the next version comes out and you have to pay for that. No, you don't. You don't have to pay an upgrade cost. When CS7 comes out, there's no additional fee. It'll automatically be available to current subscribers. So that's where the savings of the cloud starts coming in.
Yeah, that part is brilliant.
Yes.
Before we wrap up, Pariah, could you talk about what's happening on the 24th, briefly?
The 24th.
Yes.
Well, that will be exactly 3 months before the Earth is supposed to end. Just kidding. On the 24th...
that requires a...
Yes.
That's ominous.
It's supposed to be a good thing.
Yes. Oh, so the Creative Cloud thing, it's only really economically viable assuming the Earth doesn't end in December. If it does...
And if you use multiple products, and if you always want to be current. Yes.
Right. After that, if the Earth ends, then you overpaid.
That's right. That's right. Though Adobe is planning actually a refund. So they're being real good about that.
Yes, if the world ends, they'll give us our money back.
That's right. It's all planned. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay, moving right along. September 24th.
It's no longer After Effects, it's After Life, but that's another thing.
Oh, I like starring Liam Neeson.
I like that. I bet Brandy's working on the little, really ugly... Never mind. Sorry.
Okay, 24th.
Okay, on the 24th, I'm really excited because a new venture will be announced. I'll be announcing a new venture in cooperation with Kirsten and someone else. And you can find out about that on my website, iampariah.com. Come around the 24th.
Yep, and I'm going to put stuff up on kirstenrourke.com too.
Yes, thank you. So, it's some really good stuff, and hopefully the book will be out soon. Actually, and I should mention this, ePublishing with InDesign is going to be actually multiple books and courseware. It's not just the one book that's currently being advertised on Amazon. Certain topics change so often, I just can't cover them in print. It's pointless. By the time you bought the print book, the topics would be out of date. So I'm producing some ebooks around that as well, supplemental ebooks, like fixed layout ebook publishing. That'll be strictly as an ebook. There won't be a print edition. And then everything will be courseware that'll be updated constantly. So if you're an educator trying to teach ePublishing, even if the information changes, the courseware will be updated so that you can continue to teach the current stuff.
Great.
So that'll be announced on my website too once that finally comes out. It's such a process. I'm done writing. I've been done writing for months, but it's such a process with these publishers. They're just not built to do fast turnaround anymore. So,
Are you going to be presenting anywhere, any trade shows, anywhere people can catch up with you?
I was going to do Barry Anderson's ePublishing conference in Chicago at Graph Expo in October, but I'm actually moving to Massachusetts during that time, so I chose not to.
Oh, you're actually moving?
Yep.
Sorry?
You're actually moving?
Yep. I am moving to Massachusetts so that I can give Kirsten a hard time in person.
And I'm just so unhappy about that. Miserable. Snoopy dance.
But the first week of October, I've got some online webinars coming up called the 3x5s. 3 hours with 5 experts on Photoshop. Well, it's 3 different events. So 3 hours with 5 Photoshop experts, then 5 InDesign experts, then 5 Illustrator experts.
That's great.
Where we're all just giving away the best tips we can find. It's like a virtual panel.
Actually, get us the dates and maybe a little flyer or something we can put up on the screen when we do the shows.
Sure, great. Right now you can read about it on my website, but I'll get you that information.
Okay, that'd be great. We like doing little things like that. Well, that sounds good. Well, Pariah, as always, a pleasure having you on, and even more so on a premiere show. That makes you number one. And
thanks. I really appreciate that. Oh, can I be the first one to swear on stage? No,
oh,
just
sure,
kidding.
sure,
just
sure.
kidding.
We don't have any beeps going on.
Drat.
Drat.
How's that?
Dang.
I believe we can say frack.
Frack. Or frick. Or frickin' frack, but...
Shazbut.
There we go.
Well, good. Well, Kirsten, we've got 2 more guests lined up this month right now. We've got Larry Jordan, very well-known Final Cut Pro expert, Adobe trainer. He does all sorts of good stuff. And then we've got Justin Seeley, who you guys might know.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be on, I think, in 2 weeks. So he's with lynda.com right now.
Justin's a great guy.
He is. He's a skinny guy right now, too.
Yeah, he's been working really hard. His
geek fit podcast.
Yeah, he looks
great.
It.
It's great.
He looks great.
I've watched him drop pound after pound over the last couple of years.
You know, we had a girl in our office who got married and then moved away, but when she first joined us, she was about 400 pounds. And then she had gastric bypass and became about 200, 170, 190. She was 6 feet tall, so she could carry 200 pretty easily. And so we cut her pay in half. We said, we hired one, and now it's just we're not getting what we paid for. So
you've worked with Adobe far too long, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud?
Yeah. Oops. Shh.
Don't tell the people at Lynda that. Poor Justin will get his salary cut.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
no, Justin's great. Anyway,
I do love Adobe. I do.
I do too. I mean, there's things that you love and hate, like anything else in this world.
They're like family.
Yeah, they are. The dysfunctional part, right?
We're all the dysfunctional part on. Sorry.
Hey, there was an old cartoon I'll never forget seeing. It was a cartoon of a family convention, and in one room there was functional families, and there was one person in the whole room. The other stadium it was literally like this humongous stadium, and it was like dysfunctional families, standing room only, people trying to get in. It was just so true.
Yep.
Anyway, well, everybody, all you guys in the chat room, thanks for hanging in there. We've only gone about 50 minutes, so we're not too bad for a show. We've done longer before, so we're actually pretty good. And thank you for being there. And if you're watching the recording, thanks for being there too. And subscribe. We'd love to have you keep coming back. Kirsten, we'll see you next week.
Yep. Thanks,
and
everybody.
Pariah, thanks again so much for being here today.
Thank you again for having me. What a great show.
Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.